Dear friends, this is episode number 75. Today we have to deal with Rule 20 of Order 41 and Rule 22 onwards. 21 we have taken. What is Rule 20? Power to adjourn hearing and direct persons appearing interested to be made respondents. Where it appears to the court at the hearing that any person who was a party to the suit in the court from whose decree the appeal is preferred, but who has not been made a party to the appeal, is interested in the result of the appeal, the court may adjourn the hearing to a future date to be fixed by the court and direct that such person be made a respondent. No respondent shall be added under this rule after the expiry of the period of limitation for appeal, unless the court, for reasons to be recorded, allows that to be done on such terms as to cost as it think fit. Now take for instance a suit was filed by 3 persons. Suit was dismissed, joint and several liability. The first plaintiff files an appeal. Strictly speaking, the defendants, even if the defendants alone are made parties, sometimes depending on the facts of each case, there may not be any defect. But if the court finds that is the omitted plaintiffs are interested in the result of the appeal, the court may direct such persons to be made respondents. They cannot be made appellants unless they join. Plaintiffs 2 and 3 did not join the first plaintiff to file the appeal. They kept away. What should have been done really was the first plaintiff appellant, defendants respondents. Suppose there are 5 defendants. 6 and 7 plaintiffs 2 and 3. That is the correct procedure, but at least in some places there is a practice. Why should they be implemented? They are not bound. Suppose the appeal is allowed, they will be benefited. But the facts are sometimes intricate, complicated. So it is always better, on the safer side, that the parties in the trial court are also made parties in the appeal. Suppose some of the parties are exonerated from liability and the suit is decreed against defendants 1 to 3. 4 and 5 are exonerated from the liability. Defendants 1 to 3 file an appeal. They are not challenging that finding that defendants 4 and 5 are not liable. They are not challenging it. They need not be made parties because they are unnecessary parties for the appeal. Even if the appeal is allowed at the instance of defendants 1 to 3 challenging the decree against them, that is not going to affect defendants 4 and 5, unless of course the facts are peculiar that their presence is required. That is why a ready formula cannot be given in such cases. Depends on the facts and circumstances of each case, the contentions of the parties. But one thing is certain, that it is always better to make all the parties in the trial court as parties in the appeal. This is, we will see what is the nature of this power. Now it is also stated that after the period of limitation for filing the appeal, no respondent shall be added unless the court for reasons to be recorded allow that to be done on such terms as to cost as it thinks fit. This is to be read along with section 21 of the Limitation Act. I will come to that. Now, what is the nature of this power? The power to add parties under this rule is to be exercised at the hearing. AIR 1990 Supreme Court 1981. The court has inherent power to add or transpose parties in cases to which this rule does not apply strictly. The appellate court under Order 1 Rule 10 read with 107, Order 1 Rule 10 read with 107, or by virtue of its inherent power, add parties as respondents in the appeal, in spite of the fact that Rule 20 may not strictly apply. The appellate court finds that presence of some of the parties is required. It has got the power under Order 1 Rule 10. We have seen court may strike out or add parties. Same power of the trial court's power, the same power the appellate court has, we have seen. That is Order 1 Rule 10 read with 107, or by virtue of its inherent power, the court may add parties. Please note AIR 1941 Federal Court 16. Then a Madras decision AIR 1921 Madras 172 full bench. Then AIR 1978 Calcutta, AIR 1978 Calcutta 434. Now suppose they are absolutely necessary parties, but the appellant omitted them. They are likely to be affected, and they will be affected if the appeal is allowed. Some of the parties in the trial court file an appeal. The other parties are not. Some of the parties are omitted to be made parties, respondents in the appeal. And if the appeal is allowed, they will be affected. Then that will be non-joinder of necessary parties. That will be fatal. Please see AIR 1978 Supreme Court 240. That is why I said that it is always safe to make all the parties, unless some of the parties are unnecessarily added, just like the example who have been exonerated by the trial court and the appellant does not challenge that finding. He cannot make them parties and harass them. That he cannot. Unless, of course, suppose say the suit is dismissed. Suit is decreed partly against defendants 1, 2, 3. Defendants 4 and 5, they are exonerated. The plaintiff is challenging it in appeal. Then he has to make those persons as parties, because it is a decree is going to be passed against them. Or they are exonerated by the trial court and a decree is confined to 1, 2, 3. Defendants 1, 2, 3 file appeal. They need not make defendants 4 and 5 as parties unless they are challenging that finding in the facts and circumstances of the case. AIR 1978 Supreme Court 240, necessary parties. These are all the points to be noted in Rule 20. It says about the court's power. Court has abundant powers in this respect, and take care that all the parties in the trial court are on record in the appeal, and in a second appeal also that all the necessary parties are on record. Otherwise, even if a decision is rendered on the merits in your favor, sometimes that may become useless. So it is always safe to make them parties. Now we go to rule 22. 22 is a very important rule, very, very important, to some extent difficult also. So, to some extent difficult also. We will read word by word, word by word. Upon hearing, respondent may object to decree as if he had preferred a separate appeal. Any respondent, though he may not have appeal from any part of the decree, may not only support the decree, but may also state that the finding against him in the court below in respect of an issue ought to have been in his favor. We will come back again. And may also take any cross objection to the decree which he could have taken by way of appeal, provided he has filed such objection in the appellate court within 1 month from the date of service on him or his pleader of the notice of the day fixed for hearing of the appeal, or within such further time as the appellate court may seem it to allow. What is this? Two things are there in Rule 22. One is that there is a finding against the respondent in the appeal, and that finding was recorded by the trial court, a finding of the trial court against the respondent in the appeal. A filed a suit against B. The suit was decreed. A need not file any appeal. A cannot file an appeal. B files an appeal. In spite of the fact that A's suit is decreed, there may be some findings against him. He need not worry about it because his suit is decreed. He cannot file an appeal against that finding. Of course, there are conflicting views on that point by the Supreme Court, to some extent conflicting. You may take note of it. But this is a settled principle that no appeal lies against a finding. Exceptional circumstances are there, that is said by the Supreme Court. On a plain reading of it, it may appear that there is a conflict, but we have to reconcile that. Any respondent, though he may not have appeal from a part of the decree, may not only support the decree, but may also state that the finding against him in the court below in respect of that issue ought to have been in his favor, and may also take any cross objection to the decree which he could have taken. Any respondent, though he may not have appeal from any part of the decree, may not only support the decree, but may also state that the finding against him in the court below in respect of an issue ought to have been in his favor, and may also take, that is one thing, support the decree without filing cross objection. Support the decree and state that the finding against him ought to have been in his favor, but not filing any cross objection, no necessity to file. Second part of his, may also take any cross objection to the decree which he could have taken by way of appeal. I will give an illustration. I filed a suit against you for realization of rupees 1 lakh on the basis of a promissory note. You raised a contention that you did not execute the promissory note. You also raised a contention that at any rate the suit is barred by limitation. Suit is barred by limitation. The trial court accepted the case of the plaintiff that the promissory note is genuine and rejected the contention of the defendant that the promissory note is not genuine, is fabricated or something like that, or he did not put his signature, all those contentions. So the trial court said that the promissory note is genuine. But the trial court held that the suit is barred by limitation. What will happen to the suit? The suit will be dismissed because of the finding that the suit is barred by limitation. What is the position of the defendant? He succeeded. Can he file an appeal against that, or should he file an appeal against that decision of the trial court? He need not. He need not file an appeal. He cannot, strictly speaking, he cannot file an appeal. There is no decree against him. Since the suit was dismissed on the ground that it is barred by limitation, one finding is in my favor, that it is promissory note is genuine. I file an appeal to the appellate court. The appellate court finds that the suit is not barred by limitation. Then what else is the finding? The trial court has held that the promissory note is genuine. Nobody has challenged it. So the appellate court has to accept it. I need not challenge that finding because it is in my favor that the promissory note is genuine. I was defeated only on the ground of limitation. Before the appellate court is inclined to accept my contention that the suit is not barred by limitation. And it is inclined to accept that finding. Then what about the respondent? What can he do in the circumstances? That the lawyers must know. The respondent can, in such circumstances, support the decree. What is the decree? Dismissal of the suit. Support the dismissal and also challenge at the same time the finding against him that the promissory note is genuine. For which he need not file any appeal. He cannot file an appeal. He need not file a cross objection. He can support the decree by opposing the finding. So in such cases, the respondent's counsel must be very vigilant. First of all, he must be quite aware of the position of law under Rule 22. What he can do to protect the interest of his client, and then put forward that contention. In cases where it is necessary absolutely to file a memorandum of cross objection, file it, but you have to pay court fee. But if you find that the appellate court is going to decide against you on the point which went in your favor and on which you succeeded in the suit, you have to be careful. Then you have to support the decision of the trial court, that is dismissal of the suit, by not only supporting it but by opposing the finding against the respondent, defendant, that the promissory note is genuine. You can successfully do it without any paper. You can say that the finding of the trial court that the promissory note is genuine is not correct on evidence. That signature is fabricated, or the defendant did not put his signature there, whatever the contention is, or it is not supported by consideration, depends on the contention. And that contention was negatived by the trial court. You can say, the respondent can say that finding of the trial court is wrong. And the appellate court may accept your contention and hold that the trial court is wrong in finding that the promissory note is genuine. Then what will happen? The appellate court may find just the opposite against the trial court. The appellate court may find, if your contention that the promissory note is not genuine is accepted, the appellate court may find that the promissory note is not genuine. But at the same time, the suit is not barred by limitation. What is the result? Dismissal of the suit. So what do the respondent want? Dismissal of the suit. So I did not succeed in the appeal also, in spite of the finding that the trial court's finding that the suit is barred by limitation is reversed by the appellate court. I did not succeed in the appeal because you succeeded as a respondent in supporting the decree by opposing the finding that the promissory note is genuine. I think I have made the position clear. I will also cite some of the decisions, and I will also refer to the second part of it, and we will have a discussion in the next episode. Thank you.